The moment the champagne cork popped and left a wet mark on the new flat screen. In the break room, I knew they were going to screw me. I stood near the vending machine, holding a lukewarm, sparkling water, and watched the corporate theater, the database system I had built line by line over 2 years of sleepless nights and caffeine-fueled weekends, had just crossed 400% above its projected traffic. The real-time metrics dashboard on the wall was glowing green. Every API call was resolving in under 12 milliseconds. The data pipelines were ingesting heavy streams of customer activity and spitting out clean reports like a clock. Marketing people were taking group selfies. Sales managers were waving foil balloons. Braden Carr, the director of operations, was holding the bottle of cheap champagne, laughing too loud and pretending he understood the architecture diagram on the cake. Braden was 34, wore a $200 haircut that looked like a plastic helmet, and used the word synergy 3 times in every sentence. He had spent the last 6 months attending remote conferences and taking credit for my updates. I was 51, had graying temples, a bad back from 3 decades of sitting in ergonomic chairs, and a deep, quiet understanding of how fragile their entire empire was. I did not join the cheering. I just watched Braden wipe a drop of champagne from his sleeve and look around the room until his eyes landed on me. He walked over, his smirk firmly in place, and gave me a heavy pat on the shoulder. It was the kind of pat you give a dog that did not make a mess on the rug. "Hey, Bruce, outstanding work on the pipeline," he said, his voice dropping to a low, confidential tone. "Quick thing, though. Your Q2 performance bonus, the $85, zero launch incentive we discussed, it is not going through the standard payroll cycle. Upper management is cracking down on post-launch payouts. Cost containment policy, you know how it is. It is nothing personal." Nothing personal. I stared at him, my face completely expressionless. I did not blink, I did not raise my voice. I did not flip the break room table or throw my water. I just let the silence stretch between us until he started to fidget with his watch. Nothing personal, I thought. Like the 14 weekends I spent babysitting database failures during the beta phase were not personal. Like the 3 a.m. calls from the server farm in Virginia when the replication logs corrupted were not personal. Like the fact that I had negotiated the database engine license directly with the vendor because Braden did not know the difference between a relational database and a spreadsheet. I looked at his eyes and realized he truly believed I would just accept it. He thought a 51-year-old engineer with a mortgage and a family would just nod, go back to his cubicle, and keep the engine running because he had nowhere else to go. I nodded once. "Understood, Braden," I said. He looked relieved, his smile returning. "Great, great. Knew you would be a team player. We have got big plans for Q3, Bruce. We need that pipeline scaling up for the European markets. Keep up the hustle." He patted my shoulder one more time and drifted back toward the sales team, leaving me alone by the trash can. I walked back to my desk in the corner of the floor. The noise of the celebration faded behind the glass doors. My inbox was already filling up with congratulatory emails from people I had never met, alongside requests for custom dashboards. Everyone wanted a piece of the new system now that it was running. They wanted the numbers, the predictions, the beautiful charts that made them look like geniuses in front of the board of directors. I did not reply to any of them. I opened my private encrypted local directory and pulled up a document I had not looked at in 14 months. It was a PDF file labeled Contract Krypton-like signed Fine Null, .pdf. Krypton Software LLC was the vendor that owned the core streaming database engine that powered our entire analytics platform. When we first started the rebuild 2 years ago, Braden had tried to outsource the software licensing negotiation to a group of developers in Austin who did not understand enterprise terms. They were about to sign a standard utility agreement that would have allowed the company to fire me the day after launch and keep using the software with zero restrictions. But I had spent 2 weeks redlining the agreement, arguing with Krypton's side legal counsel, and forcing them to accept my customized amendments. Braden had signed the final document without reading it because he was too busy preparing a PowerPoint slide deck for the CEO. I scrolled down to page 18 of the contract, stopping at Appendix D, Clause 13.2, Subsection D. The text was clear, written in the dry, unyielding language of federal intellectual property law. It was a restrictive covenant I had inserted to protect myself. The clause stated that the validity of the enterprise software license was contingent upon the active, compensated employment status of the designated technical lead, Bruce Vance, who was named as the sole licensee custodian. If the licensee custodian was removed from compensated employment status, which was defined as the timely disbursement of all agreed salaries, performance bonuses, and contractual incentives for any period exceeding 72 hours, the enterprise license would automatically terminate. Upon termination, any continued operation of the software or utilization of its data streams would constitute a material breach of the agreement and willful copyright infringement under Title 17, United States Code, Section 106 and Section 501. Braden thought he was saving $85,000 for his department budget to make his quarterly numbers look good. He did not realize he had just started a 72-hour countdown on the digital heart of the company. I highlighted the clause, saved the document, and closed the window. I spent the next hour answering basic technical tickets from the support team, keeping my tone perfectly professional. I did not want anyone to notice a change in my behavior. I did not want them to see the storm coming. At 4:30 p.m., I opened a blank email. I addressed it to Sylvia Crane, our in-house lead legal counsel. Sylvia was a sharp, exhausted woman in her late 40s who spent most of her time cleaning up the messes Braden and the sales team left behind. In the subject line, I typed 4 words, FYI, potential compliance issue. In the body of the email, I wrote, "Hi Sylvia, hope your week is going well. I am looping you in on the Krypton database engine license, specifically the terms outlined in Appendix D. There may be compliance implications regarding the license validity if our current Q2 compensation structure does not align with the custodian requirements. I have attached the executed agreement for your review. Let me know if you need clarification. Best, Bruce." I attached the PDF files, clicked send, and watched the email disappear. I packed my bag, shut down my monitors, and left the office exactly at 5 p.m. For the first time in 2 years, I did not check my Slack notifications on the train ride home. I let the phone buzz in my pocket, enjoying the rhythmic clanking of the wheels on the tracks. Braden thought I was just a line item on a spreadsheet. He was about to find out that without my name on that contract, his spreadsheet was worth less than the paper it was printed on. Monday morning in the office smelled like burnt coffee and corporate denial. By 8:30 a.m., the email notifications were already chiming across the floor. The celebration from Friday had ended, and the PR machine was rolling. I opened my inbox and saw the first global announcement from the Vice President of Operations. The subject line was, "A New Era of Data Excellence. OmniSite Platform Launches." I scrolled through the paragraphs of corporate buzzwords like innovation, synergy, and dedication. Then I got to the core architecture overview. There was a detailed diagram showing the ingestion nodes and visualization layer. The paragraph below explained how the system had been designed to handle high-throughput queries. The authors listed at the bottom of the overview were Braden Carr and the VP of Operations. My name was nowhere on the document. I was not even listed as a contributor. 2 years of my life, the entire design of the core schema, the custom data serialization protocols, and the configurations that kept the database from collapsing under load had been erased. In their place sat Braden's name, clean and prominent, positioned as the technical mastermind who had guided the project. The man did not even know how to run a basic SQL query without his assistant writing it down for him. But here he was, immortalized as the creator of my system. I did not write an angry email. I did not complain on Slack. A 51-year-old developer does not waste energy on drama. He prepares. I opened a new local folder on my external hardware-encrypted drive and labeled it Insurance. In it, I began saving copies of everything. I dragged and dropped Slack conversations where Braden had approved design layouts, email threads where the VP had thanked me for solving bottlenecks, and Git commit logs showing that 94% of the codebase was written under my account. I saved the system architecture blueprints with my original digital signature and timestamps from 18 months ago. I was not angry while doing this. I was completely calm. A storm is coming, and I was simply checking the anchors. Around 10:30 a.m., one of our senior DevOps engineers, a guy named Sean who sat 3 desks down, rolled his chair over to mine. He had a puzzled look on his face. "Hey Bruce, you got a second?" he asked, looking at his laptop screen. "Yeah, Sean. What is up?" I replied, turning away from my insurance folder. I was looking at the vendor dashboard for Krypton. We are getting a deprecation warning in the system status log. It says, license custodian validation required within 48 hours. I tried to log into the Krypton admin panel to clear it, but my credentials are throwing a permission error. Do you know who owns the master key for this? I looked at Sean's screen. The warning was small, written in gray text at the bottom of the window. It was the first warning sign. The 72-hour timer was running, and the database engine was preparing to lock down. I gave him a calm, casual smile. "Oh, that is probably just a handshake issue between our Active Directory and their server," I said. "I will look into it before the end of the day. Do not worry about it." Sean shrugged and rolled back to his desk. "Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure it was not a blocker. The sales guys are already using the real-time reports for their client pitches." I watched him go, then looked back at my screen. The warning was not a handshake issue. It was the license clause activating. I remembered the day I forced that clause into the contract. It was a wet Tuesday 2 years ago. Braden had just joined as a manager and was eager to show upper management he could cut costs. He had brought in a consulting group from Austin, a team of young contractors who promised they could build the platform in 3 months for a fraction of my salary. Braden had scheduled a meeting to discuss transitioning my responsibilities to them. I had called our vendor representative at Krypton that afternoon. I explained that since I was the only certified database administrator on staff who knew how to configure their engine, the license validity had to be tied directly to my compensation. If the company tried to replace me with cheap contractors, the vendor would lose their support contact and the system would fail. The vendor legal team agreed. They did not want a bunch of third-party contractors messing with their proprietary engine. They drafted Appendix D, Clause 13.2, Subsection D, and inserted my name as the sole custodian. Braden was so eager to sign the agreement and get the project moving that he did not even look at the appendix. He just scrolled to the signature line, signed it, and sent it back. The consultants from Austin failed within 2 months, unable to configure the data streaming clusters, and Braden had to beg me to fix the mess. I had fixed it, but I kept the license clause in place. I knew that a man who tried to replace you once would try to screw you again. I looked at my watch. It was 11:30 a.m. The 72-hour countdown had started when Braden told me my bonus was withheld on Friday afternoon. That meant the system would lock down on Monday night at exactly 11:43 p.m. I went back to my work. I cleaned up the staging logs, checked the security protocols, and made sure the automatic backup routines were running smoothly. I did my job perfectly, just as I had for the last 5 years. I did not want anyone to say I had sabotaged the system. I did not have to. The contract was doing all the work for me. At 2 p.m. I received a notification that I had been removed from the Operations Steering Committee calendar invite. It was a recurring weekly meeting where Braden and the executives discussed the platform growth. I had been attending it for 18 months. Now I was no longer invited. They were isolating me, trying to push me into the background so I would not make a fuss about the stolen bonus. They wanted the platform and the prestige, but they did not want the 51-year-old engineer who made it all possible. I closed the notification, took a slow sip of my coffee, and smiled. Let them lock the doors. They did not realize I had the only key to the engine. The targeted isolation began on Wednesday. I logged into my workstation and noticed my Slack sidebar was unusually clean. I clicked on the operations channel, but the screen displayed a simple gray message. You no longer have access to this workspace. Same with the data engineering channel. I had been removed from the morning stand-up calendar invite as well. I looked across the room. Braden was sitting in his glass office, talking on his phone while looking in my direction. He did not lock eyes with me. He just glanced and looked away quickly, tapping his pen. He thought he was being a master strategist, that by cutting off my access to daily discussions, he could contain the fallout, prevent me from talking to junior developers, and slowly push me out before the Q2 financial reviews. He treated me like a security risk. I did not get angry. I did not walk over to his office to demand an explanation. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet on my offline drive and titled it Platform Dependencies E3.6. I spent the next 4 hours mapping out every service, script, and API endpoint that relied on my database engine. I knew the system better than anyone because I had built its foundation. I wrote down the sales dashboard that the global teams used to track daily conversions, the customer churn prediction models that marketing ran every afternoon, and the financial reconciliation scripts that compiled quarterly revenue projections for the CFO. By lunchtime, I had 43 critical business systems linked to my data pipeline. By 3 p.m., the list grew to 71. By the time I closed the file, there were 92 separate pipelines, cron jobs, and reporting systems that directly depended on the Krypton database engine. The final column was labeled, Failure Condition Without License. The entry for every single line was the same, Complete System Blackout within 72 hours of license revocation. On Thursday, the silence deepened. Nobody on my team asked me for help. The junior developers avoided my desk, probably because Braden had dropped hints that I was on my way out. I spent the day working on private scripts and watching the green status lights. The system was running perfectly, processing millions of transactions, unaware that its legal heart was about to stop. Friday morning arrived, bringing the first real crack in the corporate facade. At 9:30 a.m., Sylvia Crane, the lead counsel, walked down our floor. She looked like she had not slept. She walked straight to Braden's office, tapped on the glass, and gestured for him to follow. She also signaled for Gavin, the senior HR rep and a junior finance analyst, who looked fresh out of college. She led them into conference room C, right across from my desk. The conference room had glass walls, but they had pulled the plastic blinds halfway down. Sylvia sat at the head of the table, laptop open, her face tense. Braden sat opposite her, leaning back with his usual smirk, crossing his legs and tapping his leather shoes. I had Sylvia's assistant, Clara, sitting next to me. Clara was monitoring the conference room microphone because Sylvia had asked her to transcribe the meeting notes. Clara kept her headphones on but tilted her screen so I could read the real-time transcription. Sylvia opened the meeting without small talk. Is Bruce Vance currently compensated in accordance with the custodian clause in the Krypton software agreement? She asked. Gavin, the HR rep, answered first. Bruce is active on payroll. He has not been terminated. He is receiving his base salary. Sylvia did not look satisfied. That is not what I asked, Gavin. Has his Q2 performance bonus, the $85,000 launch incentive, been disbursed? The junior finance analyst cleared his throat, flipping through printouts. No, the disbursement is on hold. It is under internal review by operations. Braden leaned forward, gesturing. Sylvia, this is standard procedure. We are just evaluating post-launch stability metrics before we release the incentive funds. It is a cost containment measure. The team did a great job, but we have to align with the new budget directives. Sylvia closed her laptop. The sound was a sharp snap that froze the room. Braden, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. You are an idiot. Braden's smirk slipped. Excuse me? You signed the Krypton Enterprise Agreement 14 months ago, Sylvia said. Did you read Appendix D? It is not boilerplate, Braden. The license validity is contingent upon the compensated status of Bruce Vance. The contract defines compensated status as the timely payment of all agreed salaries and bonuses. The payment deadline for the Q2 bonus was Thursday night at 11:43 p.m. Since the funds were not disbursed, the 72-hour grace period started running immediately. Braden shook his head. So what? They are going to sue us for an $85. Zeros and bonus dispute? No, they are going to revoke the license, Sylvia said. Under Title 17, United States Code, Section 106 and Section 501, using their database engine without a valid license is federal copyright infringement. The database engine runs our entire analytics platform. If we run that engine after the grace period expires, we are operating an unlicensed pirated system. The statutory damages for willful infringement are up to $150,000 per violation. Every dashboard refreshed, every query run, every report generated from that database becomes a separate legal exposure. The junior finance analyst looked pale. Gavin stopped chewing his gum. Braden's face started to turn red. Come on, Sylvia, that is just legal theory. Krypton is not going to shut down an enterprise client over this. I contacted their compliance director this morning, Sylvia said, leaning forward. They have already flagged the warning. They are auditing our system access logs. If Bruce Vance is not paid by Sunday night at 11:43 p.m., the license is void. The system will lock down. Gavin looked at Braden. Braden, can we just process the payment? We cannot, Braden muttered. The Q2 budget is closed. I already submitted the cost containment reports to the VP. If I reopen the payroll adjustments now, it will flag the department for a budget variance audit. I will have to explain to the board why we are spending $85,000 above the target. So you decided to risk a federal copyright lawsuit to save your own reputation, Sylvia said, standing up. I am going to the CEO. If this is not resolved by Monday morning, we will be in breach. And I will not be the one explaining to the board why the entire company metrics platform went black. She packed her laptop and walked out. Braden remained in his chair, staring at the empty table, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his phone. The fire had started, and the countdown was down to 48 hours. The collapse began at 3:12 a.m. on Monday morning. I knew the time because my personal monitoring script sent a silent notification to my phone. The automated global sales reconciliation report, which compiled weekend numbers for the executive team, had failed to generate. By 3:34 a.m., the internal DevOps Slack channel was in a state of absolute panic. A junior engineer posted that the core cluster was throwing API connection errors. By 4 a.m., the DevOps team was treating it like a major infrastructure outage. They checked the servers, restarted container instances, and looked for failed migrations. But the logs were clean. There were no hardware failures or network drops. At 6 a.m., the true nature of the issue became clear. Every dashboard in the company, from marketing metrics to the investor portal, refreshed with a crimson banner across the top. License revoked. Unauthorized use under 17 U.S.C. Section 106. System access terminated. Contact custodian. The 72-hour grace period had expired on Sunday night at 11:43 p.m. The Krypton database engine had executed its automated license check, verified that the custodian compensation validation had failed, and shut down its query parser. The database was still there, the data was intact, but the engine would not execute a single line of code. When I walked in at 8 a.m., the floor felt like a trading room during a market crash. People were running between cubicles and crowding around DevOps desks. Braden was standing outside his office, face pale, clutching a paper cup of coffee like a life preserver. He was yelling at a system administrator, demanding to know why the backup servers had not kicked in. I walked past him, sat down, and opened my laptop. I did not look at the crimson banner. I did not log into Slack. I just opened a clean text editor and started working on a personal Python project. At 8:15 a.m., the CEO walked out of his office and signaled to Sylvia Crane, who was standing nearby with a thick black binder. He looked at Braden and said, "Conference room C now." I watched them file in. This time they did not pull the blinds. Sylvia opened her binder and laid out printed documents. Braden started talking immediately, pointing at his laptop, probably arguing that the vendor had made a mistake, that it was a bug, or that they could bypass the check. Sylvia let him finish, then tapped her pen. The transcription on Clara's monitor showed her response. "There is no technical bypass, Braden," Sylvia said. "The engine is proprietary and the encryption key is held by Krypton. Bypassing it would be a direct violation of federal copyright law. We would be actively hacking a licensed software engine to run our platform. That is willful infringement, which carries triple damages. The license expired last night because the custodian, Bruce Vance, was not compensated." The CEO looked at Braden. "Braden, why was Bruce not paid?" Braden swallowed hard. "We were conducting a standard review of the launch metrics, sir. The bonus was just delayed for policy compliance. It was not a refusal to pay, just a standard review cycle." Sylvia cut him off. "You were notified in writing on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I told you specifically on Friday that if the payment did not clear by Sunday, the license would terminate. You chose to ignore it." The CEO turned to Gavin. "Gavin, can we process the payment now? Put the $85,000 through immediately. Get a wire transfer done in the next 10 minutes. Gavin looked at his screen. "We can run a manual disbursement. It will take about 30 minutes to clear the bank. Sylvia shook her head. It is too late. The contract is clear. Once the 72-hour window expires, retroactive payment does not automatically reinstate the license. Appendix D states that after a breach, the license remains void until a new agreement is executed. If we send the money now, we are just paying a debt. We still will not have the legal right to run the database. Braden looked like he was about to faint. The CEO stared at him, his expression turning cold. So, what are our options? The CEO asked. We have to contact Krypton's compliance team and negotiate a reinstatement, Sylvia said. But they will not talk to us without their custodian's signature, and their custodian is Bruce. The room went quiet. The CEO looked through the glass wall, his eyes scanning the floor until they landed on me. I kept my eyes on my text editor, my fingers typing code at a steady pace. I did not look back or smile, I just let them stare. At 10:30 a.m., Liam, a junior HR assistant, walked over to my desk. He looked terrified, holding a printed sheet of paper. "Hey, Bruce," he said, his voice cracking. "Gavin and Braden were wondering if you could help us write up some transition documentation. You know, just the step-by-step process for how database clusters are configured and how API endpoints connect." I turned my head and looked at him. I let the silence stretch for 5 seconds before I spoke. "Liam," I said, my voice calm, "the system is currently unlicensed. Under the terms of the Krypton agreement, any use of the software or its database structures is a material breach. If I write documentation for an unlicensed system, I would be facilitating software piracy. I cannot assist you with that." Liam blinked, his face turning red. "Oh, okay, I get it. I will tell them." He shuffled away, holding the paper like a shield. I went back to my text editor. The company was bleeding data. Their investors were looking at blank dashboards, and Braden's $200 haircut was not going to save him. The countdown had ended, and the price of my bonus had just gone up. The call came at 6:42 p.m. I was at home, sitting in my favorite leather armchair, pouring a glass of 12-year-old bourbon. The ice clicked against the glass as my phone started to vibrate. The screen did not show an office extension. It was a direct line from the CEO's personal cell phone. I took a slow sip of the bourbon, let the phone ring 3 times, and swiped to answer. "Vance," a voice said. There was no greeting, no polite introduction. It was the CEO. His voice sounded like it had been dragged through gravel, exhausted and tense. "Yes," I said. "What will it take to get the analytics engine running?" he asked. I could hear the hum of the office ventilation in the background. He was still in the building, looking at the blank monitors. I set my glass down, opened my laptop, and pulled up a document I had drafted 2 weeks ago with my attorney, titled Reinstatement Buyout Eterniums BOP TDF. I did not rush to answer. I let the silence hang to make him feel every second of the outage. I wanted him to think about the investor call scheduled for the next morning. "I have a PDF file ready for you," I said, my voice steady. "I will email it to your personal address now. It contains 3 conditions for license reinstatement." "Send it," he muttered. I clicked send. I heard his computer chime. There was a long silence as he opened the attachment and read the terms. The first condition was the immediate wire transfer of my unpaid Q2 bonus, the $85,000, plus a 40% contract breach penalty of $34,000, bringing the total to $119,000. The second condition was a complete buyout of the license custodian clause. Since they wanted to run the platform without my name being tied to it, they had to purchase the rights to remove the custodian clause from the Krypton contract. The buyout price was $380,000 to be executed through an escrow account managed by outside counsel. The third condition was a written statement from the executive committee acknowledging my sole architecture of the OmniSite platform. The statement had to be read aloud by Braden Carr at the next company all-hands meeting. The silence on the phone stretched for 15 seconds. I could hear him scrolling. "This is almost $500,000, Vance," the CEO said, his voice dropping to a growl. "This is extortion. This is contract compliance," I replied. "You agreed to these terms when Braden signed the enterprise license 14 months ago. He chose to withhold my compensation, which automatically voided the license under federal copyright law. If you run the system tomorrow without executing these terms, you are presenting pirated data to your investors. The statutory damages for that will be significantly higher than $500,000. I heard him exhale a long, ragged breath. He was a businessman. He knew how to calculate risk, and he knew when he had been cornered. The investor call was in 12 hours. If the dashboards were blank, the stock price would drop by 15% before noon. "We should have just paid you the damn bonus," he said quietly. "You should have," I agreed. "You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to clear the funds and sign the agreement. After that, I will instruct Krypton to escalate the license revocation for a formal copyright audit." I hung up without waiting for a reply. I picked up my glass, took a sip, and went back to reading my book. The system I had built was doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect its creator. By 8:30 a.m. the next morning, my bank account notification chimed. A wire transfer of $119,000 had cleared. At 8:45 a.m., Sylvia Crane sent an encrypted document link to my personal email. It was the executed buyout agreement, signed by the CEO and the board, along with confirmation of the $380,000 escrow deposit. The third document was a signed PDF of the announcement to be read at the all-hands. I logged into my Krypton administrator account, verified the signatures, and clicked the green reinstatement button. The license status changed from revoked to active. Within 5 minutes, the crimson banners vanished from the company monitors. The ingestion nodes started processing the queue, the streaming clusters cleared their backlogs, and the API calls began resolving in under 12 milliseconds again. The investor dashboards lit up with fresh data just in time for the CFO presentation. I did not go back to the office on Tuesday. I had already submitted my formal resignation letter to HR, effective immediately. I did not need the job anymore. On Wednesday afternoon, the company held its all-hands meeting over Zoom. I logged in using a guest account to watch the final act. Braden Carr was standing in front of the camera in the main conference room. He did not look like the confident manager who had patted my shoulder 5 days ago. His face was pale, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was holding a sheet of paper. He cleared his throat twice, looked down, and began reading. "I would like to formally acknowledge the work of Bruce Vance," he said, his voice monotone. Bruce was the sole architect and lead engineer of the OmniSite platform. His dedication and expertise were the foundation of this launch. The company regrets the errors in our attribution and compensation process, and we thank him for his contributions. He folded the paper, looked at the camera, and stepped aside. The chat window in the Zoom meeting was silent. Nobody posted emojis. 2 days later, the company announced that Braden Carr was no longer with the organization. His department was being restructured under a new director. I spent the rest of the week sitting on my deck, watching the sunset and planning my retirement. I was 51 years old, and I had just walked away with $499,000 in payouts because I had read the fine print. To all the engineers, developers, and office survivors out there, always read the licensing terms. Build your system, but build your trigger too. And never let a manager with a $200 haircut tell you that your work is just a policy exception. Subscribe for more stories of corporate switch flicking. Let us make them pay for every line of code.